Welcome to WholeCEO with Lisa G. I'm the best-selling author of The Boss Weight Loss. I'm bringing you the top tips to be unstoppable. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to actually pull up a chair with today's top experts in mindset, weight loss, business, and more. Learn our top tips so that you can have more energy, be fit and resilient, feel unstoppable, unshakable, and unbreakable. Welcome to WholeCEO with Rob and Susan today. She's a high-performance leadership coach, published author, founder, CEO of Elite High Performance Inc., and member of the Forbes Coaches Council. Susan and Rob host the Leadership Launchpad Project podcast, rated Canada's #3 top leadership podcast.
Whoop, whoop.
I am so excited to have you guys here today. I know there's so much more I can say about you, but why don't you fill us in? Give us the highlights, Rob. What do you got? What are you up to in the world?
Yeah, so I'm Rob Kalwarowsky. I'm a high performance leadership coach with Susan at Elite High Performance. I'm a TEDx speaker. I just finished recording that one in July about how to deal with an asshole boss. So that was totally fun. And of course, yeah, Susan and I, we co-host the Leadership Launchpad Project podcast together, which we interviewed Lisa on. In real terms, it was 2 weeks ago, but we'll see our publishing schedules vary. So definitely head on over to that one and check it out because Lisa was awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I am so passionate about this topic of horrible bosses, and it's really from personal experience that I've had in the world with men. Let's be honest. So it could be a boss, it could be just, your father or your spouse or just people that you see interacting in the world in a way that you can't find another word besides horrible or inappropriate. So before we even go into any other topics, I am fascinated with this topic. Why are you guys so passionate about ending the horrible bosses forever?
Well,
Yeah.
I'll speak. Yeah, go
Okay, go
ahead.
ahead. You can
I
go.
was just going to say a little bit about why I started this business 15 years ago. So I'm the founder of Elite High Performance Coaching, and I started that business coming out of professional women's hockey because I was aghast with what it was that I experienced in high pressure, high stakes, highly competitive environments, right? And just the destructive leadership practices that were going on, the 1.0, as we like to say at Team Elite, practices of, just the toxic bosses that I had in the athletic space. And then I got into bringing all of this high performance mindset coaching into business. And I quickly saw that it was largely the same epidemic of toxic leadership going on in those spaces as well. And so, I think both Rob and I obviously come from a space and place of experiencing firsthand just how costly it can be to allow those types of leadership practices to go on here in 2023. I mean, athletes and business people have never been more stressed out than they are now. Gallup just released its recent survey on this. This is the most stressed we've ever been as a workforce, right? So, I think that's where Rob first came to me as a client initially when he first walked through my doors, was because he was experiencing some of the cost to his mental health from having some of the toxic leadership himself. Right, buddy?
Yeah, and like this is the big point, right? Is you're not alone out there if you've had a bad boss, right? Actually, 65% of the workforce experiences a toxic, well, technically the term is destructive leader today. And
Mm-hmm.
so this can range from the folks who yell and scream all the way to folks that maybe they just don't accept this, they don't accept responsibility or accountability or make decisions. There's a wide spectrum of what a bad boss can be. Actually, the research I use uses 6 archetypes to describe those different characteristics. But ultimately, the folks who have a bad boss, they suffer from the profitability, productivity, like the business results, but they also suffer from increased health risk, both heart attack, stroke, major disease, as well as mental health problems. And so and not to mention happiness overall, right? And so,
Hmm.
really, like, I want folks to be happier. I want folks to be more productive, and actually, those go hand in hand.
Hmm.
And so that's why we're on this mission, is really to create better workplaces where folks feel better.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's a toxic work environment wherever these horrible humans are around, where it's like a horrible boss, a horrible husband, a horrible human, any of those. And then you suffer the toxic effects of that. And we're all suffering right now in our mental health. And I'd say over half of the workplace is pretty much thinking about quitting. They're disengaged. And then I met you guys, and I'm like so glad we're all powerful leaders in ending this toxicity so that people can be happy at work, so they can be engaged at work, so that they are more creative. Do you want to elaborate any more on your 6 aspects of what happens with this trauma?
Sure. So the first thing I just want to say is bad bosses are not bad people,
Right.
right? And so often this comes from their own pain, or they've learned to be a leader in a certain way by watching TV, or their parents or their teachers or their coaches. And so none of this is necessarily the leader's fault. Like, there's like 1% of people who are sociopaths, which may be actually out to get folks. But
Yeah.
for like 99% of people, you just didn't learn leadership in the best way. And that's fine. I mean, it's like Susan and I always talk about this stat from Harvard Business Review, where it's like people become supervisors at roughly the age of 29, and then they receive leadership training at 42.
Wow.
And it's like, think about every other job in the world.
Yeah.
Like, if you go work at any fast food restaurant, they train you on how to do your job. You know, if you're a barber or a tattoo artist or like something like that, you do apprenticeships for like a year working under experts to make sure you know how to do this. Like I'm an engineer by training. Like, I had to go to school, and then I had to work 4 years under supervision of a professional engineer to get certified as an engineer. And then they go, "Hey, Rob, tomorrow, do you want to be a leader?" Right?
Right.
And,
Hmm.
and so
That
that,
is so
yeah,
powerful. I'm glad you started with that. Absolutely, because it's not your fault if you know your leadership needs improvement. You just need to get the right support so that you can, like, so many times when you see reactive people, it's not even anything they're consciously doing. It might have been stuff they learned when they were 9 years old. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, because the model carries the most weight, right? And so when you're 9 years old, you're basically just downloading the model of your parents' leadership, right? And then you go to
Right.
school and it's how your teachers are at the front of the room. Or for me and Rob as athletes, how your coaches were at the front of the locker room. And again, right? Like, they didn't know what they were doing because they definitely were not doing the leadership development and training back then, right? Especially parents.
I
Parenting
think so.
doesn't come with any type of preparation around what type of leader you're going to be in the home.
Yeah, they didn't know any better. They were just parenting in the style of their parents who were never trained to be parents. So,
That's the problem. The rinse and the repeat, right? Because it's mostly subconscious. We're not even aware of how we're leading if we're not thinking about this stuff, right? And so, yeah, how do you disrupt the perpetuation of that pattern if you don't get your butt in a seat and start learning about some of this stuff in regards
yeah,
to best practices, right? And I think the other thing that we really want to mention is like this has come a really long way over the last like 1 to 2 decades since neuroscience arrived on the scenes, right? And even more so over the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen a major acceleration in the amount of data and research that's being done. in the leadership development world because of the pandemic, right? Which did a
Oh,
wonderful job of exposing all the cracks in our leadership foundation. And
yes.
so I think that's really what we're on a mission to raise as much awareness around as we possibly can, right? Is the importance of getting on that leadership development training journey, even if you're not a leader yet and you just aspire to someday be one, because leadership is a behavior. So
Yeah.
just like athletes had to go in the gym and get on the ice to train and rep that out, it takes time to develop best practices as
I
a
love
leader.
that quote. Leadership is a behavior. That is really a nice way to look at it, because oftentimes we don't mean to get these bad results because we didn't know any better. So I think it's always good to obviously get help and
Mm-hmm.
for the end in mind, like,
Definitely.
why am I here? What is my goal? Rob, I
And you
didn't
have,
mean to
mhm.
cut you off. So do you guys want to keep diving deeper into this topic?
Sure. Yeah. And the big thing here, right, is what Susan mentioned, and even Lisa, what you mentioned, right, is these are typically emotional or reactive behaviors, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we've learned this basically from when we're 0 to 7 years old.
Right.
And so, like, I'm born in I always talk about mindset as being like an operating system. And I'm born in 1988. So basically, I'm running Windows 1995,
Yeah.
right?
I
But
love that.
but
Yeah.
my hardware is 35-year-old man with responsibilities. I have a wife, I have a dog, I have to pay my mortgage. Like, I have all these responsibilities. I got to lead a team, right? And so it's like it's natural that we have to perform the Windows update, right? And I know it's
Yeah.
annoying and I know it sucks and I hate it too, right? But it's like this is how we get the best performance out of ourselves and our team.
Yeah.
But it takes going to that level of mindset to get those results, right? So none of this, and this the stats back this up, of course, it's organizations spend $356 billion a year on leadership development, and
Yeah.
only 25% is effective because it addresses mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'll just let that hang out
Why
there.
don't we talk about mindset then? Because I know you guys are
Mm-hmm.
passionate as I am about the
Mm-hmm.
mindset. Like for me,
Mm-hmm.
I like to wake up in the morning and set my mind up for success instead of focusing on what already happened. Just start fresh. Like, here's what I want to do today. I want you guys to talk about mindset and doing the deep mindset work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is why we differentiate in this way in the leadership development space, right? Because we just can't believe that there are all these companies out there that are actually putting hard dollars behind this investment, right? And
Right.
75% of it is completely ineffective because it's not going to the step of depth known as mindset. So mindset's a terminology for those listeners who haven't come across this terminology before that comes from neuroscience, and it refers to this playbook of beliefs that we have back here in our hardwiring in our subconscious mind, the
Right.
programming that Rob was referencing a second ago. And it's important to note that that subconscious mind is the part of your brain that really is running the show. 95 to 97% of your choices all day long. Boom, 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 boom. You don't even know you're making them. You don't know why you're making them. You don't see the impact of making them, right? So we don't understand how you affect behavior modification, since leadership is a behavior, without going to that step of depth known as mindset. This is what governs the way we feel, which governs the way we choose to do or not do. It's what governs our results,
Yeah.
right? So for us, we just can't even imagine helping a leader develop without that mindset work.
Well, how do you get out of that old reptilian 800-pound gorilla brain into something more productive?
Absolutely. And we use a few techniques, but ultimately where we start looking is through the emotions, and the emotions allow us to understand the beliefs that are running, which the beliefs are an element of your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, let's give you an example. Like, I went to an event on Tuesday, and there was about like 100 people in the room. And at the beginning, I knew one person in the room, right? And also, I was one of 10 men in the room, right? So it's like it can be intimidating to walk into a room where you don't know anybody. You're one of the only men in the room, and it's like, I want to meet folks. I want to talk to people. I don't want to just want to sit awkwardly in the corner, right?
Right.
And so a lot of folks would feel fear and uncertainty, and I felt some of it, right? And it's like, if we can understand where that belief's coming from and we can change it, which we can absolutely learn how to change those beliefs, we can run that Windows update, right? Then we can step into that room and go, I'm Rob, I'm here, I know who I am. And like, of course, people would want to meet me. Like, just like I want to meet them, and they don't want to feel weird, and I don't want to feel weird. So if we feel weird together and we talk, then we'll both feel less weird, right? And so that changes the behavior that you have. And this can be like sales calls. This can be going out on dates with people. This can be uh, when you're leading a team, like what this means if you miss your KPIs, or how you deliver above your KPIs. Like, this hits every area of your life because the mindset follows you everywhere.
So you have to reframe then what your mindset is if you're going to an event in fear to maybe, I'm excited, I get to meet new people. Something,
Yeah. Yeah, you pivot your perspective, right? Because beliefs are the meaning we ascribe to situations that inform our perspective. It's all about utilizing these brain training tools and strategies that we work with here at Team Elite in our process so that you actually understand how to affect change on that perspective, right? This really is where emotional intelligence lives, right? In self
absolutely.
leadership, right? It's
Yeah,
learning how to be responsive rather than reactive, which is largely a state management game. And
yeah,
again, state just being, the experience that we have on a moment to moment basis, the communication between our brain and our body, right? That affects, again, the quality of results that we're going to be able to impact.
wow. I love that answer from both of you guys. And I know also too, it's important to curate your environment. Like, let's say you're in a toxic environment and you can't really thrive. Is it really important, like who you surround yourself with, the top 5 people that you surround yourself with, and what you're listening to? What do you guys think about curating your environment?
Oh, totally. Right. So there's two sort of big answers to this. One is you can be very deliberate and very choosy about your environment, right? So, yes, you can work at a toxic workplace, but you can also listen to podcasts like these, like yours, like ours, like, I don't know, there's many inspiring podcasts that you can listen to, or people on YouTube or whatever, right? So, you can choose that. You can also choose not to look at Facebook, Twitter, like the social media stuff that may bring you down or may make you
Yeah.
feel like, you know, Lisa's doing way more amazing things than I am, so I feel jealous, right? Like,
Yes.
Or
so
less
these
than.
are these are things, right? You can choose. Now, the self-work only can take you so far. So totally you can do I mean everyone needs to do self-work, don't get me wrong. But if you have a bad boss and your work environment's toxic and like your teammates are kind of like maybe everyone's super competitive or they're talking down to you or like your boss yells at you, it's like ultimately you need to make a choice for yourself to leave this environment, right?
Yes.
Or set very hard boundaries where folks cannot,
Treat you that
like you're
way.
just not accepting that behavior.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
ultimately, it comes down to you and your mindset, because without that mindset and the ability to choose for yourself, you're just ultimately you're going to stay. And the research proves this is folks with bad bosses actually stay 2 years longer in the role that they have than other folks. And it's because of this stuff around like I, my boss doesn't make me feel like I'm good enough, so I can't get another job because I don't believe I can. And
Hmm.
so be very deliberate about crafting the things you can craft, and then set boundaries and work on your mindset so you know kind of where those are and when it's time to choose to leave.
I love that answer, and I love the setting boundaries part. It took me so long to even learn that lesson. I'm embarrassed, but I finally did.
Don't
And
be. It's
Most
completely
of us,
normal.
I mean, where are we taught this stuff? We're not taught it in school. We just said we're not taught it in our leadership development until we're on the job for more than 10 years. I mean, where would you have expected yourself to have learned about these boundaries, especially if you didn't have parents who modeled them for you, which
yeah,
our parents did not
I made a mistake. Let me
back
be
in the
honest,
day.
but it was like there was no emotional maturity at that
No,
level.
no, not at
I
all.
I want to throw the next question to you, Susan, because
Mm.
you guys are so amazing at what you do with your coaching. So, how do you encourage people you work with to live your legacy? And Rob, you can weigh in too, obviously.
Well, we're big fans of this whole concept around legacy. We don't believe that you leave a legacy. We believe that you live a legacy. And that means that you do justice in terms of the brain training that helps you live in alignment with what it is that you want someday your legacy to be. So the way this works from a mindset perspective is like we take our clients there first, all the way to the rocking chair, so that again, we can alter their perspective of what really matters most to them, right? Like we always say to our clients, when you sit in that rocking chair at the end of the day and you look back over your life and you see how you've shown up and invested your valuable finite resources of time, energy, and focus, how are you going to know that you made it count?
Yeah,
Right? What are the things that are going to really stick out to you that are most meaningful and significant? This is a wonderful job of filtering in just our awareness in and around our values,
yeah.
right? Which then sets up the actual self to start living that way, right? In alignment with those values. And so this to us is what living your legacy means, not just leaving it someday, right? By accident, having not had thought about it. This is all about deep, deep sense of purpose and intentionality in terms of the way that we show up every day.
I love
Rob, what would you
Rob.
add to that? Because I know Rob has some thoughts on this one too.
Yeah,
Yeah. For me, leadership is a journey that we're on. Some folks are not walking, other folks are running, but ultimately it it is to become the highest potential leader we can be. This can be, you don't have to have a title to be a leader, right?
right.
But this journey is about becoming who we can possibly be, and that person that we look back and go, wow, I'm proud of who I became. And
So
this
cool.
is where that legacy part goes, right? Is we start do a lot of visualization work, and it's like, who's the person that leaves that legacy? And then now that I see who that person is, it actually builds a belief in our mind that I'm already that person and I've already done that legacy. And so those 95 to 97% of decisions your subconscious makes, it just naturally aligns to that because that's who you are. So why wouldn't you, like for me, like when I started working with Susan, all I saw was myself on a stage doing a keynote. And then, it wasn't that I magically fell and hit a TED stage. I hired a speaking coach who specializes in doing TED. I worked with her. We put a proposal together. We reached out to a bunch of conferences, and boom, it happened, right? But it's like, of course I would do TED because that's who I am. And that's the switch for folks. And it's just like Lisa, like you, with setting boundaries. It's like I set boundaries because I love myself, and that's what people who love themselves do. It's just who you are now versus what we all learn, which is like stuff it down and just push through.
Mhm.
Yes. Wow, I can't even believe how fun it is to talk to you guys and how long this has gone. This is even longer than my regular podcast, but I love that piece on self-love. Do you guys want to end on that note and tell our audience how they can become unstoppable by loving themselves more? Because it sounds so simple
Right.
and
Oh my gosh, this is what we were literally riffing on before we jumped on this podcast. Remember, I
I
was
love
telling you I'm in such a
it.
good mood because Rob was coaching me a second ago. But this is what we were talking about because this really is our process. Our process differentiates in the leadership development world, not only because we go to the step of depth known as mindset, but because we start with the relationship with self. It all starts with self-leadership. The model carries the most weight. That's where we started this whole conversation,
Yes,
right? Yeah. And so, yeah, we fundamentally believe that, you don't have those resources to be able to give to your people until you fundamentally know how to give that to yourself. And you have to be in integrity with all of that in terms of meeting your human being needs, self-love being one of them, right? Because that's
right.
what really sets you up and primes you to be able to step into that with your people.
Absolutely. Any last words, Rob, you want to leave our audience with, and where can people find you and all that good stuff?
Absolutely. And yeah, like self-love and self-acceptance are ultimately the hardest things that you're ever going to work on. However, as you work on them, your life will drastically change for the better. And this is Susan and I are testimonies of this. We have clients who are testimonies of this as well. It will bring you to places you never thought you would go. So, and a TEDx stage in Japan is one of those things.
Wow.
But
Congratulations on that.
yeah, thank you. And so for us, obviously, if you're looking for one-on-one leadership coaching or mindset coaching, elitehighperformance.com is the place you'll find us. Obviously, wherever you're listening to the Whole CEO podcast, just Google Leadership Launchpad Project and hit subscribe. You'll hear Lisa's pod at some point. And whenever this one's out and whenever yours is out on our feed, it'll be out sometime. Um, and then, yeah, like I wanted to give something to folks. And so one is I'm giving away 5 free sessions with me. So 5 folks in your audience, if they're interested to take that step of depth a little more into their mindset, just shoot me an email, rob@elitehighperformance.com, and I'm happy to schedule a one-on-one with you because we're doing this because there's just so many folks that I'm sure you're listening and you're like, ooh, that maybe I'm a bad boss, or maybe I could be better, or maybe I can change, or maybe that some of that stuff sounds interesting. So if you're one of those folks, shoot me an email, rob@elitehighperformance.com, and we'll make it happen.
Thank
This
you.
is part of the self-love journey is that you become so generous in your heart, right, Rob? With all that to give to her people. That's so kind of you.
Thank you, guys. It was wonderful having you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for being on our show as well. And thank you for everything that you do to help us change the way this game's being played in leadership.
Thanks for coming to Whole CEO with Lisa G. After over 20 years helping people lose weight and get fit, I'm so excited to announce that I found the missing link with my coaching. Message me if you want to learn how to look better, feel better, and go faster with a master. Lisa G at lisagfit.com.